Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, Principal Atmospheric Scientist at Nutrient Ag Solutions, and I want to thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. We begin with last week's Drought Monitor. This was released on Thursday, and while we are drought-free across the Carolinas, the conditions that you see across the western United States are a piece of the longer-term puzzle here that we need to be examining. Because over the last month, we've seen degradation of drought in parts of Texas, the Four Corner States, California, and even in parts of the Central Plains. Things have improved in a few spots like here, and in the Pacific Northwest. But the reason why I'm discussing drought to get us started is because the drier conditions here and here across the western part of the United States are largely due to a lack of subtropical jet stream flow. Now, clearly across the Carolinas, we have been quite wet, even though there is a little pocket in through here of drier conditions. North Carolina, because of what was left of Hurricane Ada, plus that stalled out boundary recently, over the last month, it looks quite wet here. But what does this and this say about our upcoming winter pattern? Well, it says this. Okay, now this is an interesting plot to take a moment to look at. It's our last month. And what it's looking at here in the warmer colors is the speed and position of the jet stream, specifically the west to east component of it. It's really favoring going up into Alaska, then diving down here across this part of the Canadian prairie, and then rebounding into the North Atlantic. What I want you to see, though, are the cooler colors here and here, the subtropical branches of the jet stream. They have been missing. You can see here that the speeds have been slow compared to average. And if that continues to be the case moving forward, I have concern about much of the southern tier of the United States over toward the Carolina coast having some drier, well, better than not chances this winter. So let's take a look at what I'm talking about there. La Nina, right in through here. When there is a strong trade wind component to the flow of the atmosphere across the equator, it tends to rob momentum from here and from here in the flow of the jet stream. That's just the correlation. Let me show you what I'm talking about. This next suite of maps illustrates for you the December, January, and February patterns in terms of temperature on the left and precipitation on the right for the La Nina events we've had since 1950. Now, when you're looking at these, the strongest ones are at the top, the moderate in the middle, and the weaker at the bottom, going from top to bottom. Again, temperatures on the left, precipitation is on the right. Now, when we examine the temperature pattern, you do see more often than not, like I'll just pick a really strong year here, 1949-50. There tends to be colder air across the northern interior of the U.S. with warmth across the south, okay? But notice not all years look like that. In terms of precipitation, you're going to find that if you blend together all of these maps, they favor drier conditions from, well, California to Texas over toward the Carolina coast, and a more active storm track in the Pacific Northwest and through the Ohio River Valley and places like that. So given that as a backdrop, and I do want to encourage you just to pause the video right here and take a closer look at these analog years. But when you see these forecasts, like the most latest one released here by the IRI Multi-Model Group, it now starts to make some sense. Precipitation anomalies on the left. You can see that with the La Nina developing, the wetter conditions are here through the, basically from the Great Lakes to the northeast, and also through the Ohio River Valley. But with no strong subtropical component of the jet stream, which is characteristic of a La Nina year, we tend to see drier conditions all across the south over toward the southeast coast and the Carolinas. What about temperatures? Well, this tends to be warmer in this area, but the latest IRI graphics suggest that the cold air will be coming out in a direction something like that this year. So just adding this on to the European forecast, to the National Multi-Model Ensemble forecast, which I've given you over the last couple of weeks, this is just another kind of piece of evidence putting together what our picture is going to look like for this upcoming winter. So that's what we've got right now. From there, let's do a little bit of model verification. Over the weekend, this is looking at total accumulated precipitation through very early this morning. And I specifically want to show you this feature here. Now, that map is now over here on the left. And on the right, this is what the GFS model was forecasting for this weekend. So while we see that the position was relatively good, the amounts and the pattern wasn't really well matched. Which model did do well with this? Well, it was the European. Look at how that's, almost a spot-on forecast by the European model. Now, the reason why I'm telling you about this is because when we look back over the last couple of months, The skill, which is represented here on the y-axis, has been much better for the European model, which is the blue line, than it has been the GFS, which is the red line, especially as of late. The European has been outperforming the GFS in a big way. And as a result of the GFS's recent very poor performance, I'm going to toss it out of the forecast that you're going to see for the rest of this video. All right? What's it been missing? I think it's been missing this pattern. A strong Pacific jet stream that's getting bunched up here. And as it does so and moves across, we keep sweeping these troughs through the Pacific Northwest around a large ridge that's sitting off the coast of California. That large ridge there is what's been dominating the flow to our west, preventing any sort of stronger subtropical jet stream. It's down here. Here's the subtropical jet, but it's really meeting up with the polar jet right here across the United States. This is our pattern today, and we need to see where this pattern is going to be going in the near term. Now, before I get into that, why has Alaska been the source region of so much of our trough pattern that we've been seeing here? It partly has to do with the strength of the polar vortex. Now remember, this winter, the polar vortex and its strength is key to understanding where all the cold air is going to be. If the polar vortex remains strong, which means its values are high on the graphic over here on the right, then all the cold air stays locked right into here where I'm writing the word cold. All right. So on average, throughout this winter, this black line I'm drawing tells you where the polar vortex strength should be. It's currently here, above average strength. If it ever gets displaced in December, January, February, down like this, then we could be on the lookout for a major Arctic blast that could last several days. But at this point, the polar vortex is undisrupted, it is undisturbed, and it is quite strong and very, very circular in its rotation here over the Arctic. Now, because of that, the cold air being tucked up into that area, that's going to be our source region of troughs. And that brings me to this animation. Now, I'm just going to play this for you, but I want you to notice a couple of very important things. Watch Alaska, watch Greenland. That's where the coldest air is anchored. Each one of the passing troughs that cuts through the United States does just that, passes right on through. So as I click play, what we continue to see here is not a blocked pattern, but instead one that features a lot of troughing that comes out. I'll just step back here to the end of this week. Look, all the trough over, Greenland, over Alaska. So systems keep coming in like this, and they just come squeaking across the United States relatively quickly. But getting out to day 10, which is right here, we do see that the jet stream is attempting to go into a configuration where we have what's called the positive P&A pattern. And that trough that's here is going to shove a large ridge into the western part of, North America. And that's going to leave for us here over the south and southeast a cooler pattern. So again, we're typically getting the opposite of what's happening along the west coast. And so you see the ridge there? Well, our trough is going to set up, and I'll show you what that does to temperature and precipitation in just a few moments. But here is what we're expecting over the next week. Got two large systems that are coming through the mid part of the country, including some severe weather to the south here we're going to look out for. But notice, over in the Carolinas, we're not talking about a lot of precipitation through the next 7 days. It's also dry here and across the west as well. Keep that in mind. If we compare all this to normal, we can see that this next week will have a slight drier bias. Doesn't mean we won't get any precipitation. In fact, unfortunately, some of that's going to be coming through on Thanksgiving. But overall, this is the pattern I'm expecting through next Sunday evening. Now, last night we did have some scattered showers, and I'm going to show them to you right here with this model run. Here's our scattered showers through early this morning. But after that, this is now 5 a.m. this morning. Watch what happens as I play this forward. All the actions in the middle part of the country. Higher pressure moves over North Carolina, and as a result, we really tend to be drier throughout the middle of this week. But change will come once this frontal boundary, which is sweeping through the Ohio and lower Mississippi River Valley, finally gets over here by Thursday. And let's go out there and take a look at that by switching over to our high-resolution European model. So again, this was early this morning. Let's play it through right here and pause it Wednesday morning. As this moves through, the low goes from Illinois to Michigan, and to the south of this on Wednesday, I'm going to be watching this whole area for strong to severe storms. Now, do they make it to the Carolinas? Well, here's Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon. There's going to be scattered showers in through this area, as you can see here, possibly a rumble of thunder at this point. But as this moves forward, that frontal boundary clears out by the evening. on Thanksgiving and moves off to the east, and higher pressure tries to come in. Now, system number 2 starts to take shape this weekend. So you can see Thursday we got our chance at precip, and then it backs off toward the end of the weekend, the start of the weekend. But then watch what happens on Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, and Saturday evening in the midsection of the country. So we're still dry over here. But this next system goes from the panhandles straight through the Ohio River Valley to start off next week. And you can see that it's dragging in quite a bit of moisture, such that by next Monday, getting into Tuesday, we're going to have to watch for the system to sweep through. And should this end up showing up exactly as the model's projecting it for next Monday, there's the potential for us to have some stronger thunderstorms come through this area. All right? I'll be watching it too, because this could mean snow for where I live right over here. So again, Thursday this week, Monday of next week, that's our next 2 chances at getting some precipitation. Now, just to show you right now how solid of an idea we have about that second big low pressure system, the European ensemble is starting to gather together with its 51 members, okay? Several of them are showing that low pressure center developing in that area. So that's giving me confidence in that next week storm system. From there, we saw the pattern eventually do something a bit more like that. It's kind of highly amplified here, and I may have drawn that line a little bit too amplified, but I'm trying to illustrate the fact that we're getting a reflection here of a trough that's really caused by what's going on over this part of Alaska. So this is your positive P&A pattern. Now, with a trough in that area, week 2 is going to favor wetter conditions here along the eastern part of the United States. And that's really what that's just saying. It's not overly wet, but it is favoring wetter conditions. What does that mean in terms of temperatures? Well, first, I do want to show you that some of the colder air we got last week has now put much of the state of North Carolina on my map as to places that have already seen a freezing temperature so far this year. So everywhere that's gray, we've already had a frost. Everywhere that is white is where we're still waiting to see a first frost of the year. From there, though, let's go over and look at the National Digital Forecast Database max temperatures. So today is pretty darn close to climatological normal. So this is what we'd expect for this time of year. Mid to upper 50s with 60s here along the coast. Going from there into the day tomorrow, it's a bit of a cool one for Tuesday. As we then get from Tuesday into Wednesday, and then Thursday, remember, this is where we're going to have the push toward the rain. So we're going to have some warmth coming in with the wetter conditions on those southerly winds. But again, it's going to be wet on Thursday here across the state. As we get into the day on Friday, then Saturday and Sunday, we do go into a milder weekend out ahead of our next chance at possibly getting some cooler air in place. When does that arrive? Well, here's the 5 to 10 day setup. So the trough starts here, as you can see, and then going beyond that into the 10 to 15 day, it begins to become established here over the southeast toward the Carolina coast. So remember, what the jet stream was doing was something a bit like that, right? So the warmth is up here compared to, now it's still really cold, but compared to normal, it's very warm in this part of Canada. That seems to be the pattern the models want to hang on to. And this goes all the way out, by the way, to December the 8th. So we're looking at maybe a cooler start to the month of December here across the Carolinas. From there, I want to talk about South America now, because I know a lot of the price movement happening in some of our big commodities like corn and soybeans is because of some of the issues happening in South America. So as I finish this up, let me show you a little research I did last week. I found a paper in the journal Nature, and it was talking about something called vapor pressure deficit. That's a measure of the partial pressure of water vapor. In other words, how much water vapor or moisture is in the atmosphere. They looked back over the last 40 years and found that in this region right in through here, but also in the Amazon, there's been an increase in vapor pressure deficit. So that means that the dry season, which is August, September, October, has been expanding. It's getting longer. I then went and plugged in to the ERA 5 data, which comes from the European model, an analysis that looked at October rainfall totals for Mato Grosso. And what we found is that over the last 40 years, there's been about a 1-inch total precipitation drop in October. And so this is delaying the planting of soybeans. Now we've seen that here. That's Mato Grosso in that black box. And there is a deficit right now of about 10 inches of total accumulated precipitation. You're going to hear some news this week about a lot of replanting in Mato Grosso because back at the beginning of November, there was about a 7-day time period where they had very little rainfall and the soybeans failed to germinate. And that's critical for understanding what's going to be happening there. Root zone soil moisture, it's dry here and it's dry there. And why I'm bringing this all to your attention is because the forecast in the coming days is for not much relief. You see, the MJO looks as though it's crashing here into what we call null space, but I'm going to make an argument that it's going to pop out in either to phase 4 or 5, and that would be drier for Brazil, as you can see in the correlation maps over there on the right. Why am I saying that? Well, look right over here. You see, these blues over the next 15 days represent stronger trade winds, and the reds represent stronger westerlies near the surface. And they meet right on that line, which sits exactly on top of phase 5. Now, phase 5 is here, where there's going to be upward motion. There's going to be sinking motion there, and good upward motion over the Amazon, but not so great over Brazil. Now, all of that put together gives me these two maps. And what you see is that this week it's dry here, and next week it is dry there. Now, what does this mean? This means that the soybeans in this area are missing some critical early season moisture. This means a delay as they try to put in the soybeans, and I've heard upwards of 1 million acres are going to get replanted. This is going to continue to push or put stress on the planting of the soybeans, the safrinha corn crop, which is the second corn crop, as well as cotton. And we need to pay attention to all of that moving forward. Because as we look longer term, well, the analogs would suggest continued worry about drier conditions in this area. See, what I'm going to play for you over here is an animation of what happens in Brazil during all those La Nina years. And many of them give you drier conditions in that particular spot of Brazil. Not every year, but many of them do, okay? Now from there, the long-range IRI forecast has got some patchy drought. But then drought developing later in the season for January and February down in southern Brazil and Argentina. What's the point of all of this? I think we're going to continue to see a story develop out of South America, such that due to La Nina and some other factors, the growing season is going to be stressed. We're going to keep an eye on it. I'll keep reporting it back to you, all right? Have a good rest of your week. Have a great Thanksgiving. I look forward to talking to you again next Monday. Thank you.